Hey everyone, real quick before we start, we've been getting a lot of messages from you guys telling us how much you love what we're doing on RŌL Radio. If you could do us a favor, leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast. This will allow us to make the podcast even more amazing and to continue bringing you the tremendous guests you have come to expect. Now let's get to the show. At the age of 6, today's guest moved from Lithuania to the United States. To help build her confidence, her father enrolled her in Japanese-style Jiu Jitsu, Taekwondo, and eventually the sport she fell in love with, BJJ. As an early teenager, she was considered a BJJ wunderkind and training with legends like JT Torres, Emily Kwok, and Marcelo Garcia. Training with these incredible BJJ practitioners led her to winning the women's adult blue belt lightweight title at the age of only 14. By 17, she was a brown belt. By the age of 19, she received her black belt from Marcelo. Here's RŌL Radio with 5-time world champion, 4-time Pan American champion, instructor, artist, and advocate for women's pay equality in BJJ, Dominyka Obelenyte.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
Gary, how are you, sir?
You know, I'm always good. I'm always fantastic when we do these, other than like during my normal life. But before we get started, once again, let's talk a little bit about Fuji Sports and our gi giveaway. Just go to therolradio.com, take a little survey, and you are automatically entered to win a Fuji gi. We just gave our third one away. All 3 people who won couldn't be happier. It's the gi of your choice. So just take that survey at therolradio.com, and you could be a lucky winner.
Yeah, people are stoked about this. Pretty nice gis. But listen, I just literally, as we were getting ready for this episode, I got a text message from one of our listeners, and I want to put that out there because it's funny. When I listened to RŌL Radio, it was amazing and very professional. Format, sound, structure, etc. It's not a Mickey Mouse radio show.
That's right.
I'll just leave it at that.
I'm blushing, and I know who wrote that, so I'm blushing even more because it means a lot coming from someone.
You know who you are. We appreciate the kind words. But listen, guys, if you do like what we do us a favor, leave us a review wherever you're listening. Give us thumbs ups, follow us, because that helps us to continue this show, having these great conversations. Speaking of a great conversation, Dominyka, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're doing
Fantastic.
Good. We're doing good. How is everything going on your end today?
Everything is going well. I worked out. I'm going to get to work after this. I'm having a great time.
That sounds good. Listen, you have a very interesting story, and I was stoked where Emily suggested you to be on part of this show, and I reached out right away. We had some conversations off air. Your story from a jiu-jitsu perspective is quite amazing, right? So many people, including myself, often think of a world championship and achieving that ultimate point of success, being the one and only who is left. Everybody else kind of stepped aside and cleared the path for you, right? It is the ultimate goal of any jiu-jitsu practitioner in a sport arena, and you have achieved that level at age of 14 in adult division.
Yeah.
So
pretty crazy.
let me wrap my mind around this. So adult division is from what age to what age? Just so we clear this up for people who don't know.
I believe the adult division is from 18 to 29, 30. I believe masters begins at 30.
Yeah, I think it's 30, 31. Yeah. So but you enter that competition and you win the competition at age of 14.
That's right.
What's wrong with you?
I'm sneaky. I've always been a rule breaker.
Is that true? You always a rule breaker? Is that what it is?
I'm such a goody two shoes. I'm such a stickler for the rules, but I am very sneaky. I will say that. I think that the whole purpose of me entering the adult division was I was in adult classes at the time, and I was doing most of my training with adults, most of my private training with adults, most of my coaching was from adults. Most conversations I had day to day were with adults. I thought I was an adult, which I really severely wasn't at 14.
I was one of those kids.
one of those, I'm so mature, I just know it. I'm such an old soul. So I think it was very natural for me to think that I belonged in that realm, but also my father, my coach, at the time, it wasn't Marcelo Garcia. I believe I was in a transitory state going from Team Lloyd Irvin to Marcelo. So I believe Emily Kwok was my main coach at the time, made a decision to enlist me in that division because they thought I would have great success in it. And boy, were they correct.
So was this their decision or was this your decision? Who initiated this thought of, listen, we're going to go to Worlds. And by the way, you're going to do adults. Surprise.
I think that it wasn't so much a surprise. I believe that basically I was kind of a robot in those days. Mm-hmm. I kind of just had stuff put in my path and said, okay, I guess I have to do this. So my father and my coaches at the time would make a lot of shotgun decisions that I was just along for the ride for. And I was already competing in adult divisions and various smaller tournaments like Nagas and Grapplers Quest and things like that, and Opens. And I had done juvenile before. I got second place in 2009, I think. And I lost my finals against Mackenzie Dern. And I believe at the time I was 11 and she was 12 or 13. So we were also breaking the rules being in the juvenile division, which was 15 and 16-year-olds, by being tiny little nuggets. So then I think afterwards I had one chance at doing Worlds at Blue Belt as an adult, and I believe I lost. And then the second time I did it, I won. So I think it was just a natural progression. My family and my coaches already saw that I was having great success with adults, and usually the juvenile divisions just weren't as stacked. And obviously it's more impressive if a kid dominates an adult. So I think that was their call, but I definitely wanted that to be the case as well.
Well, and I mean, obviously this is a huge achievement for more than one reason. I mean, just achieving this level of success within your division, your age group, your weight class, and your belt level, it's, it's a huge milestone, right? But you go beyond, I think, all of this. What I'm interested to actually ask you is, there is so many students, and even, I found myself in this position as an instructor. Often you hear this statement is, I'm not ready for that. I'll wait when I have that blue belt. I'll wait when I have that purple belt. I'll wait when I lift more. I'll get in shape. I work on my stand up. Oh, I hear that a lot. I work on my stand up because everything starts standing up. I work on my stand up. That's when I'm going to go in, right? And you kind of break all the rules, like in that aspect. It's like, no, I'm not going to wait when I'm 18. I'm not going to wait on any of these. This is where I find myself, and I'm going to challenge myself. What's going through your mind? Like, is that even a consideration in your head at that point?
So the greatest part about this 14-year-old Dominyka winning Blue Belt Worlds in adult, the greatest part of the story is the fact that I could have defaulted to many different excuses. So something that was happening at the time, as a month before I was set to compete, I was doing a private with Emily, and I knee cut in a really weird way and twisted my back and popped my rib out. And it was so significant that it was making it very difficult for me to breathe and move. I couldn't train. I couldn't really move around or work out or run or do anything for cardio. I was having a really hard time just sitting in a chair without pain. And I went to the chiropractor a few times. I had my rib popped back in a few times, but it always kept dislocating, or the cartilage kept dislocating. So I already was in a negative. I hadn't trained properly or efficiently in 2 or 3 weeks. I was cutting weight. So, when you can't train and you're cutting weight, usually you just starve. Usually you just don't eat. And I didn't know how to wake up properly either. So that was adding to the whole mess of it. And I remember on the plane ride there, I took some painkillers that had an adverse reaction with my body and ended up giving me a fever. So the day before I was set to compete, I was sick, I was hungry, I was in pain. When my dad asked me to drill some moves on him so that we could like game plan a little bit for what techniques I would try and hit off the bat as soon as the match started, I couldn't even hold him in closed guard. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't do much. And the day of, as we were walking up towards the pyramid, each step that I took up those stairs was agony. I was in so much pain. I felt like my whole body was inflamed and on fire, and my footsteps were super heavy and my muscles ached. And my dad already was like, how are you going to win? Like, how are you even going to compete? And I was like, I don't know. Like, what else am I supposed to do? We're here. And I just kind of went with the inertia of the situation and didn't even consider pulling out or anything like that. That was never a consideration in my mind. And then I remember in the first match, which to me is the make or break match, because that's where you really decide whether you have the mindset on that given day to continue all the way on to the finals or whether you're going to falter and break. The very first match, my opponent passed me. And this was a huge oh no. I was never getting passed in training. It was one of the things I actively prepped against. And I would always listen to my coaches when they said that the best way to recover from side control is to not get passed in the first place. So it was a huge shock to the system. And it was a huge kind of mental block. I was like, crap, I've been passed in my first match. Am I good enough to win this? And I'm in a lot of pain too. So I don't know how this is going to go. And then I heard Marcelo's wife, Tatiana, coaching me. And I heard her voice and Emily's, and kind of listening to those two really powerful women on the side there cheering for me and telling me to continue, kind of amped my energy levels up a little bit. I managed to recover out of side control, and I managed to sweep my opponent, and then she turtled. And I remember Tachi screaming, Dominyka, if you get your hooks in, you win. And I was like, that's it? All I have to do is get my hooks in and this shit is over. I'll be done with this match. And I did it. I got one foot in, stuck the other foot in as hard as I could, grabbed that girl by the horse collar, yanked her back, and just held on to her for dear life. And I won the match. And after that, I remember I laid down on the floor next to the mat. I put my back under my head and I just took a nap. I just fell asleep. I was so tired and just still feeling the after effects of that fever I had. And when I woke up and they were telling me it was time to go again, I just had this thought in my head of, well, if you won that last match, why can't you win this one? Like, might as well try to win this one as well. Mm-hmm. And that was the mentality for every single match. So for me, honestly, like I said, I was kind of robotic in those days from ages like 9 to probably 17. I was very much like, you put something in front of me and tell me I have to do it, I'm going to do it. And there's no questioning about it. It's kind of the way I was raised with the severe Eastern European philosophies, where you have to do what you need to do. You have to do what you need to do for the family, for your education, for your life, for survival. And that sounds very serious and dark, but those were the principles that were applied when my dad was kind of enforcing coaching for me in jiu-jitsu. So if I was injured, who cares? I still have to do the deed. If I didn't feel good or if I didn't prepare, I could find a million excuses not to do something, including not compete. But if I know I have to do it, then I'm going to try and work around those excuses as much as possible and commit to getting the deed done. So I think for me, if someone out there is trying to coach themselves into trying competition, maybe you're a hobbyist that's trying to entertain the idea of stepping onto the mats, and there's really no reason to, because it sucks. It sucks to be nervous and sucks to have anxiety and like a big goal in front of you where if you don't succeed, people watch you fail. And that's hard. That's really difficult to experience. But if you tell yourself that you have to do it, that this is a goal that has to be completed, that there's no other way around it, you must go through the wall, then you might achieve what you thought you couldn't. And I think that was a really important lesson for me to learn at a young age, because it's definitely allowed me to venture off and attempt things into my adulthood that I never would have been brave enough to had I not had those experiences when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something really important, and I was making notes as you were speaking and telling that story. But recently, we spoke with Gustavo Dantas, and he talked very similarly about the competition mindset, where one match at a time. Gustavo Gasparin talked about this the same way: is one match at a time. Don't overthink. You're not thinking the end. You're thinking it right now. And this was something really, I think, it's something really important, where us as humans, we overthink the situations. And I'm not even referring to jiu-jitsu. We just overthink things. There's so much anxiety and just chaos, at least in my head, that it's so easy to get derailed on your plan.
Well, everybody's afraid of failure, right?
Well, of course, nobody loves
it. But afraid of it. I'm not talking we don't like it. Of course, nobody likes it, but I'm talking about like afraid. You're not going to do things because you're scared of the outcome.
Well, yeah,
that's really hard to get over.
Nobody likes losing. I mean, it just shows that we're not good enough. I mean, that's essentially what losing is. You were just not as good as the other person. I mean, that's what losing is, right? But at the same time, it gives us a learning curve. I'm curious, where does this maturity level come from? Like, you are 14, for crying out loud. Like, are you really telling me that you got, like, this is going through your mind? Like, I have a fever. I didn't train for X amount of weeks because of my rib injury. I'm hungry. I'm cranky. I'm dehydrated. And I just got passed. The one thing I was not supposed to happen just happened. But yet this somehow came out on top. And you know what? I'm going to do it again. What the hell? I'm just going to go and do it again. Where does this come from? Like, where's this logic at the age of 14?
Mostly, but it's mostly trauma. If you're put in a hot furnace, you're gonna do whatever it takes to climb out of that hot furnace. And if your hot furnace is you not achieving at a certain level, then you're going to do whatever it takes to achieve. And unfortunately, for most of my life, I was in scenarios where I was subject to acute abuse, and I needed to perform in order to keep a baseline home life. So if I didn't perform, my home life went down the toilet. But if I did, it was at a stable neutral. So I told myself that I didn't have a choice, and anything that was me not measuring up to the expectations of others was me failing, and I just could not fail. I could not allow myself to fail. And what happens when you have that mentality is you either cripple like yourself into despair, and you have a lot of self-loathing thoughts, and you just kind of enter a depression where you don't really want to do anything because you're not quite sure what the outcome of your life could be in the future. Or you work as hard as you possibly can and you leave no stone unturned. Whatever hang up you have in your jiu-jitsu, maybe you're tall and you don't like to invert because that's not an intuitive part of the game for you. You have to do it because that's a stone that will be left unturned if you don't address it. Same with being out of breath during training. You need to train more. You need to run. If you're not strong enough as your opponents, or your opponents are on steroids and you're not, you have to weight lift. You have to make sure that you're strong. You have to eat healthy. If one division seems like it might be more useful to you than the other, you go up a weight class or you cut down. So you just do whatever it takes to achieve that thing, whatever it is. And that's not great, but a lot of Olympians and a lot of high achievers were put on that chopping block And when you're put in the situation where failure is almost not an option, like the idea of failure is so terrifying that you would do anything to escape it, you tend to achieve high results. And that's not me advocating for any kind of parenting. That's not me advocating for any kind of coaching techniques. That's just what happened to me. And funnily enough, when I left that cycle of like internal kind of abuse and friction, I still was able to be a high achiever because my goals became more centered around making myself proud. And because I had grown used to that high level of achievement before, I expected nothing less of myself than that same level. Now, the drawback of this is everything I do in life, I expect that same high level of achievement. So if I'm not achieving it, I don't really compliment myself or tell myself that I'm doing a good job, which is bad for me. And it's something that I'm working on, but it's something that allows me to get to a place where I'm able to accomplish a little bit more than maybe the average Joe or the hobbyist, because I have these built-in systems already in play.
You know, and we had Travis Stevens on the show, and he talked similar concepts where the failure was not an option. It was not even on the table. Like it wasn't even a conversation. You know, and you talk about very similar mindset of you know, not even allowing yourself to get there as far as the thought is concerned. You know, and some of these experiences that you had early on in life put you in this situation where these habits, or it's not skills, but habits, I guess, were developed where you have a very strong mindset, very driven mindset, aiming for that goal, whatever that goal is. Let me ask you this. What if someone didn't have these experiences? What if somebody, you know, I don't know, maybe had a very cushy life up to this point and they still are trying to do these things? Now that becomes extremely difficult for them. No?
Oh, absolutely. Also, I will say that I was lucky enough to experience these unfortunate circumstances that provided me with these internalized systems and tools to help me succeed later in life. I was lucky enough to experience all that from an early age when I was still in my formative years. So now these systems are built in, and what I'm trying to finagle within myself is any kind of negativity or any kind of irrationality that I may give myself as a result. I'm trying to like fabricate that out. For others that haven't had those experiences, you absolutely should not put yourself in the way of extreme trauma or near-death experiences or anything like that to achieve your goals. It's probably going to take a long time though, because for me, it took maybe like 3 or 4 years to get to a high achieving place. And that was with a lot of work and dedication and a lot of time and effort, but it was still a relatively short time compared to how much time Olympians or Olympian gymnasts, say, have spent dedicating to their craft. They start when they're 3 or 4 and they continue for 15 years plus until they even hope to achieve at a national, international level. And I was already doing...
And many of them don't make it.
Yes, exactly. And I was already there at age 14, which is crazy. But when we're at an older age, obviously life gets in the way. Obviously, our brains are more susceptible to focusing on the wrong things. So it's going to take a little bit longer to build up these systems of even wanting to achieve at a high level. And not a lot of us want to. I think the first question people should ask themselves is, do you really want to achieve at a high level? Do you really care enough? Because it takes a lot of time. Yes.
I think you ask an interesting question, right? Because I think there are two questions, right? Do you want to? And I think 90% of people will say yes. They want to.
But they don't know what it means.
The question is, are you willing to do what's necessary to get there? And that is the question where probably 90% of people will answer, yeah, no, I'll pass.
That's right. Are you like a lot of MMA fighters or Jiu Jitsu practitioners that want to be a part of the UFC or win the world championships or ADCC? Are you willing to very simple thing. Are you willing to give up sugar, give up eating dessert, or give up eating processed terrible foods? Are you willing to completely change your diet? Are you willing to have a regimented sleep schedule? Are you willing to not go out? Are you willing to not spend time with your friends and family and dedicate all your day-to-day to the gym? Are you willing to live in a car if necessary in order to be close to the gym that you need to train at? Are you willing to wipe down the mats and spend all your time there trying to take care of the facility because you can't afford to train there and that's your kind of trade? Are you willing to really push yourself to the edge for your dreams? That's kind of the big question. And a lot of people, again, like you said, they have that intentionality, but they don't really know what it takes. And when they are in it, when they are presented with that first initial obstacle that already chops 50% of people out of that league, are they going to be okay, like going through to the next phase of what it means to succeed? But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. I think the best piece of advice I can offer people that do really genuinely want to make it to that state is that you just need to keep showing up. That's a really simple thing. You just need to keep showing up to training, keep like sticking to the routines and habits that you have enforced for yourself that bring you to that high level of success and keep you functioning well. It will get easier over time, and then the problems will get bigger. Your opponents will become tougher. Things will become more challenging in different ways. But if you just keep showing up over time, you'll have made incredible progress and you'll have started your way to mastery of whatever the thing is that you're trying to accomplish. So it's possible, but do you really want it in the first place? Because it's really hard.
Yeah, you made me smile. I was laughing because we recently, Gary and I, we were talking about this, and the statement of being too stupid not to quit. It just kind of just keep plowing through it, no matter what is coming. You're not smart enough to make a decision to quit. You just keep going at it, right? Gary, you wanted to ask a question. I completely cut you off. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you did.
Yeah, I know. I'm rude like that.
That's all right. It happens all the time.
Yeah,
It
that was
happens here
about
at the
10
Academy,
minutes
too.
ago, but yeah.
It was. So if I do go back to it, to backtrack, all those negative things that were happening while you were being robotic, that I don't know personally. Well, I do kind of know a little bit that for you that caught up to you at some point, right? And
Oh, absolutely.
How do you then switch it back to turning those into positives, I guess, is my question. How do you take that negativity that you're growing up with that at some point, I'm assuming, hits you pretty hard, and you've got to then, rather than have it break you down, figure out a way now as a young adult to keep striving for those things like you did before?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I never get to speak about this. So I recently realized that everything, including mastery, is a process, and so is forgiveness and taking stock of everything that you have accrued in your lifetime of living, all the shitty behaviors, all the great behaviors, everything that helps you, everything that hurts you, all the memories that you've repressed or held back, all the memories that like you've decided to hold on to justify something. That process of investigating that whole internal system is never ending. And I thought foolishly that if I just have that big experience, if you have that mushroom trip, if you have that breakthrough experience with your therapist, if you just go out and like hike the Pacific Trail, you're gonna get it, man. It's gonna click and you're gonna understand. And you do understand. You do get it for like 10 minutes. And then it comes back in a different way. Like I said before, with mastery, the more you keep showing up and the more you progress, the harder the problems become. Mm-hmm. So once you tackle that first baby problem, then the second problem is a lot bigger. And that's same with like recovery and healing from the past and all of those things. My biggest tools have been first forgiveness, which is just forgive everything bad that has happened ever to you, which is super hard, but just do it anyway, because why not? Forgive people, forgive circumstances, and forgive yourself, because that's the person that you're always trying to impress, and that's the person you're always trying to find your way back to. Number 2 is don't take everything so seriously. I went through such a phase in my quarantine that is so embarrassing and is very like cliche liberal arts student of me, where I was really into philosophy, and I was like, the world, man, like it doesn't make sense, and we're all just beings living here, and like who cares what happens tomorrow, because the past isn't real and neither is the future. And none of that helps anybody with anything, but it does make you seem like kind of smart because you're argumenting circles around people. And that was a ridiculous phase because I took myself so seriously because of all the knowledge that I thought I accrued. I was reading extremely dense books, and I thought that made me really intelligent and made me know more, and it didn't. It was just another phase of me growing and another phase of me trying to understand myself, and I was really just the same person working through different waves of my experiences. So when I learned to just laugh at myself and laugh at the shit that happened and not be super serious about it, then it became so much easier. And I know a lot of people, especially nowadays, are very hold on to empathy with all they have to a point where it's toxic. So they're like, I empathize so much with this person. We have to heal them, save them, put them in a padded room where basically they're taken care of for the rest of their life. They're okay. Nothing's going to hurt them or touch them. That's not helping them. And you telling them that they're a poor baby and all you need to do is pity them and empathize with them and take care of them and want to coddle them is not helping them either. And I've had people try to do that to me. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. Yes. Pity me. Oh my God. Yes. I've been waiting for this. Like, let the spotlight rain down on me. Yes, I had it so hard. Oh my God. Life was miserable. That shit never helped. It only made me feel worse. It made me feel embarrassed. It made me feel like I wasn't doing anything with my life. What helped was kind of not dismissing it, acknowledging what happened, being like, this is what happened. I'm okay with it. I've forgiven the circumstance. I've forgiven the spectators and the people within it and myself. Now I'm going to laugh about it because it's funny, because it led me to where I am now. And the person I am now is pretty fucking awesome. So chill with it all.
Well,
Nice.
I want you to do the dance again.
You got it.
Listen, I mean, this is deep. Like, this is deep stuff that you talk about right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people that I know, a lot of students that I encounter, or even forget about students, just people in general in life, you know, one, life is hard. There are these circumstances that we face every single day that make it even harder, and it's hard to ignore it. And I'm listening to you, and I want to challenge you here a little bit, because like it sounds like, you know, yeah, it's hard, but who cares? Peace, like life is good. You know, let's dance, let's have fun. I mean, is it really that reality, or is it there's more layers inside there?
This is just, oh my God. I'm going to be such a hippie right now. This is just my reality, man. That's not your reality. It's not his reality. It's not anyone that's listening's reality. This is like the stage that I'm currently in my processing, where I'm like, everything is cool.
Yeah, but see, what you said there is in your processing, right? You're not just putting up errors and this phony persona, you're processing it.
Yeah.
So you can have that hippie answer, but because in the background you're working on things.
That's right.
It's not bullshit, right? You're not bullshitting people with it. You're doing the work, and the outcome of it is this hippie attitude.
That's right. And like, as I said before, at a certain point in my life, I would have been very serious and very content with going into detail about everything that happened and analyzing it and dissecting it and understanding what parts of me were changed as a result. But I've been through that already. So now I can laugh about it. And you don't have to laugh about what you went through. I, for example, went 3 years without talking to my parents. It was a really difficult time, but I thought it was the right call. And looking back at it now, it was 100% the right call, because when we did come back together and build a relationship again, our relationship is better than it was before. And we can now coexist and have love for one another and be a family. For a lot of people who went through traumatic instances with family, they'll never want to talk to their parents. Or some people will always have their parents in their lives and will never challenge them, or will always be angry at them. And you'll see their family gatherings be caustic, toxic, explosive events. But everyone is in a different stage. Everyone is trying to do what they think is best for themselves. And I know that I don't know that this is what's best for me, but it is what's happening. So naturally, I'm like, I guess this is where I'm at right now. And in this whole process of me being high achieving, I also have this very persistent view of where I am now is exactly where I need to be. That doesn't mean that I'm coasting, and it doesn't mean that I'm faltering or letting myself make mistakes and not apologizing for them. It just means that exactly as I am right now is what is happening, and it is the correct way to be, because everything that I went through has brought me to this point, and it will steer me into my future. So
there it is.
Weird long answer.
No, but this is all very interesting, because I think it's, as we talk about life and these circumstances of these events that take place, everybody has them, to one extreme or another. Everybody has family dynamics, quote unquote, right? But I think all that very directly relates into jiu-jitsu, because we find ourselves in these circumstances when we troubleshoot situations and we spar and we drill, we draw, or we compete, where we have to continuously adapt to these situations where majority of them are completely out of our control, right? So as you went through your competition, career, you find yourself in these situations, in these predicaments, if you will, right? Does your experiences from life, did they really help you, or do they slow you down during these high performance events, if you will?
1000%. One specific key item in my high performance ability is this like attitude of no regret as the bad thing is happening. So in high stress situations that I've been in my life, as the event is happening or as it's unfolding, my tendency has never been to fall apart, and this is likely from childhood. My tendency has been to figure out what to do to fix the situation or solve it or get myself out of there. And in jiu-jitsu, that's helped immensely, because if something is happening not according to my plan in a tournament setting, in a match, I bring it back to my plan. I don't fall apart or think, even I try not to let myself, or I tried, because I haven't been competing in a while, I tried not to let myself get to a point in my own mentality where I was allowing myself to talk to myself within a match about how things were going wrong. So there was one scenario where I really broke in that mindset, and that was me going against Tammy Musumeci, I believe in the 2014 Absolute World match, and she kept berimboloing me, and I had no bolo defense to my name, and I'm tall as hell, so when I fall like a tree, and as soon as I would fall, she would be ready to clamber to my back. So I was like, okay, what has worked before is I will allow her to berimbolo me, and I will sweep myself back so she doesn't get the back take, but she can come up for 2 points. I can work my way into my own sweeps or submission and get her from there, and likely sweep her into a better position for myself so I can pass right off the bat. She didn't take the bait. She didn't come up. So I was forced to fall to my butt, defend this squirrely, terrifyingly strong human being off my back, get back up, try to pass as she forcefully tries to bolo me over and over. And I know the size difference is crazy, but she felt stronger than anyone I fought that day. And I was having an extremely hard time even detangling myself from her legs. So at that point, I allowed panic to breach my system. Panic was fully over my face. I was ready to cry. I was like, I cannot pass this girl. She's not allowing me to play my game on bottom. The only thing I have to do is pass, and I'm so tired. My muscles are screaming for release because I've been doing this match for 10 minutes. And it was 0-0. So it was like go time. And usually if someone's on bottom, they tend to win a referee decision because they're the active ones. They started out in the kind of negative neutral situation. And I was like, okay, I'm not being active enough. Like, we have to do something. So I just pushed it into overdrive and let the panic kind of engulf my body. But I used it to channel myself into just trying as hard as I could to pass. And I did nothing technical. Everything was just like, try to lift her, try to get double unders, try to push her leg into her face, try to do something, like anything that looks offensive. And it worked. I won that referee decision, was not proud of it, like basically did what I needed to do to get her done. But that was an acute moment where I remember that like strong wall, that strong facade of, you're going to win no matter what, no matter like where the person takes you, you're going to bring it back to your game. That broke apart. And somehow I still managed to worm it back, even though it was very not graceful.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this mental game. And this is mind-blowing for me because you talk about these circumstances that are completely out of control. She's stronger, she's clingy, she's definitely not allowing you to play your game, and yet she's playing her dominant game plan. And then you're not talking about, I'm going to solve the puzzle technically. I'm going to figure out which sweep to execute, where to have my grips. And what you're talking about is I need to put my head, my mind in this state where failure is not an option. So I'll go to any extreme at this point to present this the way how it needs to be presented, because essentially this complete stranger right next to me will be deciding who's the winner and who's not. I mean, that's mind-blowing to me. Gary, what do you think about that?
I like the way you presented it. And I'm also thinking it was, I got to do whatever the hell I got to do to get out of here. Right. In a way. So there's a dichotomy there. Is it that thought out, or is it F it? I got to do this now, right now. And that's it.
Yeah. It's a little bit of both. It's the long haul, being like all the years of training and like mental kind of understanding and mental shaping coming to a head in that moment, like in that make or break point. That's all reacting in real time. And it's the mental game is so crucial to jiu-jitsu. And I'm not going to say that technique isn't useful or strategy isn't useful, because it definitely is. I don't feel like personally I was a very cranial fighter or a jiu-jitsu person as some of these other people are. Like a lot of these individuals that have a very developed inversion game, have a very, very developed lapel game. Those are very strategy oriented positions. And you don't, or 50-50, you don't really build up to them. You exist within them, and then you try to like make incremental steps to get to your dominant position. And I was never really like that. I was more of like a breakthrough people by just kind of like pushing and pushing and pushing as hard as I could until they faltered. And I usually would give myself this prompt to help myself in jiu-jitsu tournaments, because I hated competing. I fucking hated it. I didn't want to be there. I was always needing to poop. It was a terrible sensation to always be needing to use the bathroom for like 7 hours at a time. Like, what?
Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I understand that.
You said open book.
Yes. But I get it. Whenever I'm under pressure, it's like my stomach just knots up. It's not butterflies. It's like, oh man, where's the nearest bathroom? And it's awful.
All right, I'm redirecting this conversation.
No, it's important, because I'm sure
it's important to talk about the reality of competing. Like, for anyone that hasn't competed, that's what you're facing.
But hold on a minute. Hold on, because now you touched on something else that, again, is blowing up my mind. You say that you hated competing. You win worlds at 14. What?
Fuck that. Yo, competing sucks. I love it, but you love it like you love jiu-jitsu. Like you love it like for
It's a
jiu-jitsu.
love-hate relationship.
The metaphor I always use for jiu-jitsu is it's like a marriage. Like sometimes you don't want to be in the same room as the person. Sometimes you are extremely upset with one another. Sometimes you need a break. You need to go to Tulum for a month, like blow off some steam. That's what it's like with jiu-jitsu, and that's kind of what it's like with competing. Like, you know what the payoff is. You know that there's going to be growth associated with it. You're going to push your own boundaries. You're going to set a goal that's a really like strong, tough goal to achieve. And you're going to get there. Like, regardless of whether you win or lose, you stepped up to the plate to even be put in that position. So you're already testing yourself in this very like high level way. So this is like important and beautiful. And that's where the love for competition is that it forces you to grow. The hate for it is everything else associated with it, which is all, I think it all is centralized around the preparation of it, which is just dieting, cutting weight, having a routine that you can't pull away from, having to train as hard as you can usually, or just train as much as you can, or train like make every training session count, which is really annoying and cumbersome. You can't just play. You have to like pick your training partners. You have to figure out how to train with them. You have to figure out what rule set you're engaging in. You have to figure out if you're working like for time, if you're working for points, if you're trying to practice something that you're trying to incorporate into your competitive game. That's all really difficult. You don't have a lot of room to experiment and be free flow. You have to be regimented and disciplined, which is hard, especially for a prolonged period of time, because jiu-jitsu doesn't really have seasons. You have to do it year round, basically, if you're a competitor. So that's where the shit is, and where the real sweet spot of making or breaking a competitive experience is what happens the day of. Like, how do you see yourself? What's your mentality? Are you afraid? Are you nervous? Everyone is nervous to some extent. Either you're excited or nervous, like you have that knotting stomach feeling, no matter who you are. But are you going to view it as an experience that's terrifying, or are you going to view it as an opportunity? Are you going to assume that you just have to fight for your life and fight not to lose, or are you going to take charge and fight to win? Fight to win organization. Plug for Seth Daniels. How are you going to make that experience work in your favor? Like, are you going to let it take over you, or are you going to take over it and help it and use it to help you grow? So that's where the love-hate part of competition comes in. Like, I recognize without competition, I wouldn't be who I am. Without competition, I wouldn't have had the extreme amounts of opportunities I've had in my life open up. I wouldn't have met people that are incredibly important to me. Basically, everything that I have now, I can say that I have as a result of competition, even if it's even just my mentality or the little tips and tricks that I use to get me through the day to day. But it's not fun. Like, it was never fun to me. It was always, if not scary, if not like taxing, definitely just important, and important things tend not to feel overarchingly lovely. They tend to feel like they have a lot of gravity behind them, because you're attributing a lot of importance to the thing. So
yeah, I mean, typically the work sucks, but the reward is sweet. Right, that's the important stuff. I mean, no matter how you slice it, at least that's how it's categorized in my head. The interesting thing that you talked about is training. So preparing yourself for these competitions, these high stress events, or these moments of truth, if you will. How in the world you compete? Rewind. How in the foreign guy right here? How in the world you prepare yourself in the sense of, you mentioned selecting training partners. So we've had several females on this show, and essentially what I'm hearing almost every time, and it's not only from the guests, but from women who train jiu-jitsu in general. One, there's not a lot of women competing or just training in general. Two, finding training partners who are your skill set and your weight is almost impossible. So how do you put yourself in this position of success from a strategic perspective to get yourself ready for these ultimate moments? Because I know there's a lot of women out there right now who might be listening to this and they are like, you know what? I'm the only one at the gym and I get smashed every single day. And last night I wanted to quit because what am I supposed to do?
There's a lot of trial and error associated with it. I know that there's definitely more women present in jiu-jitsu gyms nowadays than there were when I was first coming up competing. Now I know Angelica Cabal has a huge women's team, Leticia Ribeiro too. So I think the opportunity is definitely there, but a lot of smaller gyms, obviously not everyone has access to these mega gyms. A lot of smaller gyms also just tend to have that disparity. And I'm in a position of privilege because I'm a rather large woman. I'm 180, 175 pounds usually, and I am 5'11" and a half. So hard to kidnap, you know, like just kind of different from but
even in that aspect, I mean, if you take a male and please like go through the filter of Thomas, I'm just as forward as it gets right now. But if you take,
don't stick your foot in your mouth.
Well, listen. Oops. But if you take a male who's your size, odds of them being stronger than you are still
for sure.
Right?
Oh, they're
physical differences between male and female are just tremendous. Even if you're the same height, the same weight, the same size.
Yes,
put that
for
aside,
sure.
Right? So how do you overcome these obstacles? I mean, it's still not fair.
Of course not. I only brought it up because I realize that a lot of women who might listen to this might contest anything that I have to say because they don't have this body, which will be more useful against a majority of male training partners than a really petite body, which is still very useful. But obviously I have more propensity to be stronger.
Right.
I've met so many women that are 4 foot that are way stronger than I am, but just in general for jiu-jitsu, I have the propensity to be stronger. So for me, I really rarely chose training partners that were around my size level and technique level, because that was not fun or right, especially if people were my age or younger. They had a lot of ego. They had a lot to prove. Obviously, I have to do what it takes to kind of win the match, because when you're preparing for a competition, or at least when I was preparing for a competition, I did not want to explore being put in a bad position, because I looked at it as me breaking in my mentality and allowing that bad position to happen. So I would never accept being passed or mounted or having my back taken. I'd more likely grip up with somebody and hold them in one place or keep them in closed guard than open up enough for them to even explore the potential to put me in a dominant position, because to me, I'd already be losing. I already lost the battle of whether or not I was even going to be put there. So I would always choose either the bigger training partners always had to be lower level, because I had to be able to feel that strength level, but still be able to control it with my kind of dominant technique, because I'd obviously been training for longer. And with more elite training partners, more high-level training partners that were competitive, they were black belts, they were brown belts. I either chose training partners that were more controlled. They were able to train with me without hurting me or without being a dead fish or without like trying to grind their elbow against my face, which I do enjoy. Like I do enjoy when people treat training as like kind of a severe activity where you don't really care if you get elbowed or anything, but they were purposefully doing that in order to make me hate them. So if I would find decent training partners that I trusted at the higher level, they would most certainly always be smaller than me. They'd be men that were lightweights, featherweights, middleweights. I would rarely go against heavyweights. Bernardo Faria is a great example of a super heavyweight that I would train with sometimes, not really often, that we would train with one another in a very controlled way. So usually he'd want to pass my spider guard. Usually I'd be the dummy for spider guard defense for him. And usually I'd be trying to pass his half guard. So that guy is incredible as a training partner. He knows his strength level. He knows how to control it. He knows how to use pure technique. So he's amazing to train with. But he's one of very few larger individuals that I trained with. Now, obviously, if I had to prepare for, like, when I had to fight Gabby Garcia, and I knew that was going to be the case for the Abu Dhabi World Pro, when I was a brown belt at 17, excuse me, I handpicked giant dudes for me to train with, absolutely giant people, biggest in the room I could find, just so I could get used to somebody laying down on me and suffocating me, because having somebody even lay down on you and close guard, that feeling of your rib cage getting compressed and it being very hard to breathe and move, you have to build a mental resilience to existing in that situation and making something happen, and not just like waiting to get submitted or waiting to get passed or scored on.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had the opportunity to train with Gabby, but I'm not foreseeing that as a really pleasant event.
She's thrilling to train with. If she likes you, she will train with you so wonderfully. She will be like as technical as she needs to be. If you're competing against her, it's a different story.
I'll trust your word. I don't know where I was going with this now.
Well, I'm just happy that we got to hear more good news about Bernardo, because he's my hero.
Shout out to Bernardo. Gary?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit. I'm going to totally change gears. We don't have a ton of time left, but I want to change things up a little bit. We haven't talked about your art at all.
Oh, yes.
And
I completely forgot about that. Yes.
Recent Columbia graduate, right?
Very correct.
Yes, amazing. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
I was while preparing for this, I did check out some of your stuff and I love it. And we've talked to a few people who are high-level jiu-jitsu practitioners and are also artists. And I was wondering if that's something that you feel goes hand in hand. Is it something that you sought out because it seemingly on the surface is completely different? Or, was it just something natural in you that you needed to express yourself with?
I think it was something natural. I'd been drawing ever since I was a really young girl. I always loved to draw and create. And I think my drive was for art. I wanted to be an artist, but I think my parents understood that being an immigrant and like already being in kind of a lower foothold than most other Americans, I'd have to be able to defend myself and speak clearly and have my voice heard. And I think they associated art with something that would close me up and make me very emotional and just somebody that was kind of wimpy is what I think they thought it would do, turn me into a wimp. So they liked my art. They supported my art as much as they could, but I always knew that it was not the preferred activity in their eyes. Like if I was ever creating something or drawing something or making art at home when I had homework to do or when I could be drilling, my family would always be like, why are you doing that when you could be studying, when you could be drilling, when you could be watching footage? So often I had to make a lot of art in secret. And then when I went to college is when I started to really kind of explode in creativity. And I had so many influences. Every museum I went to, every art teacher or art professor that I came into contact with, I immediately appropriated something from their techniques or from their style of creating or thinking and immediately experimented with it. So for my kind of high school to college years, I was just creating as much as I could. And now I think I'm finally settling into a phase where I'm starting to understand what my art is really expressing, because before I never really had a narrative to the things that I wanted to say. Usually I would make the thing and then try to understand what I meant by it, like what the intention behind it was. And now I'm starting to understand what's important to me and what is synonymous or what is similar throughout all my pieces and what ideas are sustained through the test of time in my kind of creatorship.
And what are those? What are those things?
So the most enduring concepts are ones that are kind of entrenched in biology, and not in the scientific way, more in this way of like continuation. Like continuation and repetition are really important to me. I make a lot of patterns. I use a lot of organic shapes that aren't entirely perfect, like circles or things that look like holes or oars, leaves, flowers, things that are just seem to be like ebbing and flowing, or they seem to be underwater, something that's like a constant kind of motion. And to me, all of those concepts are iterations of the big concept of flow and of growth, because those two concepts are really important to me and how I've conducted myself through my life. Flow, which is like accessible through jiu-jitsu and through movement, and allows you to kind of get out of your own head and just exist and be a person or be a conscious being for a while. And then continuation or growth, which is just you going from one phase of your life to the next and you unfolding into the chapters of who you are over time, which is like the most beautiful thing of all. It's like what makes life so wonderful is you get to see progression, you get to see like the marks of all that you've experienced on your body, on your mind, and on the way that you express yourself on paper, through speaking, through art, through language, all of it.
That's wonderful, and you can see it too. I think if you view it and if you have an understanding of any of that. It's Dominyka-Art. Is that right?
Yes, Dominyka-Art. Very good. Good job. Homework done.
Homework done. I'm old. I forget a lot of things. There's a lot of underlining on my paper right here too, so I cheat.
Listen, we had Chris Howder more than a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, on this show, and he's an artist too. And he said one interesting thing that actually stuck in my head, and the way how he thinks about jiu-jitsu is the mat is the canvas and you're the artist. I'm curious what your perception is of those two worlds, which often are being viewed as very contrasty, or jiu-jitsu or martial arts in general is being viewed as this very offensive, harsh, kind of edgy art, where most of artists as being viewed as these creative, soft personalities. What are your thoughts on this?
I actually have like a completely opposite view of those worlds. I'd say that the artist is this edgy, reclusive, contained, caustic, like ready to explode individual whose release is whatever the art is. Like that person is constantly in a state of working. So he's constantly like on fire. There's constantly some kind of motion happening there that is, because most artists translate their emotions onto art, it's usually something negative or something being worked through. That's usually what we see, but not always. Sometimes art can just be like beautiful and free flowing. Whereas jiu-jitsu for me, while it is, I feel like it's so funny that you say edgy, because to me, I feel like jiu-jitsu is filled with a bunch of soft bad boys. They're just like, my lats can't touch, like my arms can't touch the sides of my like body because my lats are so big and my neck is huge, and like I'm a black belt and I have a beard and all this stuff.
Wait, are you wait? Are you describing Gary right now?
Only the beard. Only the beard. Trust me.
There's a lot of guys with beards. Don't peg me on Gary. Don't.
Well, I'm just saying the musculature is not.
Yes. Let's see your lats. Let's see it.
If I stood up, I'm not going to stand up because you'd see I'm quite doughy. I don't need anybody to see that.
That's how I describe myself too. Don't worry about it. Exactly. I tend to see like jiu-jitsu people, especially some. Okay, so Emily said this, so no one can put this on. But she said that a lot of high-level athletes aren't good critical thinkers, which is true, I think, for the most part. I think a lot of really high-performing athletes that didn't go through high levels of mental preparation or growth tend to be a little ignorant and just are very disciplined and are very good with like rote stuff and getting done, but maybe aren't constantly in this state of thinking or a greater understanding. I think a lot of jiu-jitsu people think that they are, but they're not. And I think there's like something very hilarious about that. But to me, jiu-jitsu is definitely more soft. It's very like push, pull, almost Tai Chi-esque, where you're just kind of, to me, it's a dance. Like you compared jiu-jitsu to art, and to me, jiu-jitsu has always been a dance. It's always been a dance between two parties where one party is trying to pull the other one into their choreography. And it's kind of like an enforced ballroom dancing situation. And you can see this exchange of energy between people as you go through it. That's kind of why the reason I've stuck with jiu-jitsu, even though I've talked about how much I hated competition, I didn't like jiu-jitsu for a long time either. I hated jiu-jitsu for a good 5 years of my life when I first started it. And the reason I've stuck through with it is because of this like beautiful exchange of energy that occurs when you're in it. You get to see the person you're training with, you get to see yourself, you get to see what your energies look like when they're combining and when they separate. And you can really tell a lot about yourself after a roll. You can tell whether you got frustrated, whether the person got to you, whether you wanted to break a little bit mentally, whether you were strong, whether you were forcing something or letting something come naturally or using momentum. You can tell whether you had a good day or a bad day, whether you had enough to eat or you got a good night's rest. You can tell so much in the blueprint of a roll. And that's what's so beautiful to me about it. And it is a form of expression. It's definitely art because of the way that it moves. It's just happening in real time. And it is very like engaging. So you don't really have a lot of time to think about what's happening until after the fact.
Damn, that was deep.
It is. I have a question then based on all of that. Where do you feel after the dance?
You got if you're listening to this, you need to watch YouTube, okay? Because there's
you're gonna get a lot of dance tips
right now, right?
Yeah. Where did you, through all of this, through both arts, where do you feel more exposed? When somebody's watching you on the mats or when somebody's looking at something you created hanging on a wall?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh man,
Gary's putting you on a vulnerable spot now.
Where do I feel most exposed? That's just interesting because I've never thought about it. I think that I probably feel more exposed in jiu-jitsu because I feel like people have a natural association with who I am and how I'm supposed to be. If they have heard about me or know about me because they have a perception of me that's compiled off of like experiences with me or hearing me talk or images of me. So I think that people have a notion of me if they have heard about me. And when they see me doing jiu-jitsu, then that notion is altered in some way. So I think I definitely feel more vulnerable when I'm coming in as an underdog or a role model. Whereas with art, when somebody sees my art, it's really hard to measure art against something else because, you know, the people that are like the general population of people who say this about art, where they're like, oh, if it's not photorealism, it's not real art, or oh, if the person didn't put in a lot of effort, it's not real art. The people who look at Picasso's red square and are like, that red square is not art. Those people have a very kind of biased view about what art should be and what it isn't. And that's not kind of what makes the art world go round. Those are the people that I think, oh man, now I don't want to generalize, but it feels almost like those are the people that have a very particular set of tastes, but won't challenge the art world to break boundaries, if that makes sense. So I think art, because it's so subjective, you can have any opinion you want about it. And somebody can like my art and like photorealism and like a painting of somebody getting decapitated, and you don't really know anything about them. So I feel like people who like my art, they don't necessarily need to know anything about me, and they might not necessarily know anything about me after they see the art piece itself, because I feel like the art is a mirror to them. So if they like it, there's something about that art piece that they like, but it might not translate to me. Like I had a woman come to an art show of mine. She viewed a painting I did where it was 2 self-portraits of me, one that was a little bit more in tune with realism and one that was quite abstract. And I asked her what she thought of it because she was staring at it for a long time. And she spoke a lot about the realistic figure, which was a picture of me or a drawing of me. And she said, well, there's a real quiet dignity about her. And I was like, well, why do you think that? And she said, well, my mother's dying of cancer. And I see my mother in this image. And I was like, wow, okay. When I was making this, I was high on Starburst and just like trying to finish a painting final for the next day. And I thought it looked cool. But to you, this is your dying mother having quiet dignity and integrity about her passing. So she didn't learn anything about me besides I made something that she liked. But I learned a lot about her. So I think vulnerability is maybe a little bit reversed when it comes to art. But for jiu-jitsu, I think that's definitely where I feel more exposed.
If you had to, before we wrap this up, I want to ask you one more question, kind of follow up to what Gary was talking about. If you had to describe jiu-jitsu in your mind, either as creative or rehearsed, which one would it be?
I think it's equal parts of both. I think it's a balance. I think if the creativity happens when you're in flux and playing and allowing things to unfold naturally without thought. And the rehearsal is what happens when you're trying to achieve something and you have a clear goal in mind, or you have a clear idea of what it is that you're striving towards in mind.
Beautiful. Well, listen, before we wrap this up, we didn't tell you this, but we have 5 questions for you. We do this with everybody. Okay, kind of rapid shot questions. So
I love that.
Try answer the first thing that comes to your mind. Doesn't have to be anything long.
Can I tell you something really quick?
Sure.
So Saulo Ribeiro made me play this game when I first visited Jiu Jitsu University, and it was the most terrifying experience of my life. He had like 30 questions for me, and he was like, this, and I had to answer as fast as I could, and he was being very serious about it. And then I think one of the questions was, who would you most like to beat, or who would you most like to choke out in this room? And I said, you. And I was like, oh, no, big mistake.
Wow. We need to get him on the show, get his perspective on this event.
These are not that high pressure, and there's only 5 of them. So.
Perfect.
And Gary's asking him.
Right, and you've answered some much tougher questions already today.
Awesome. So let's get it. Let's go there.
So, you started very early and with pressure from your parents, but what was it like the first time you stepped on the mat?
Awkward. Really awkward. I was wearing an Adidas tracksuit, like a good Eastern European immigrant.
Yeah, like the red with the
like matching top
red and
bottom
black with the stripes.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
I love it.
I'm pretty sure I have one. Still have one of them.
You still have one?
I'm pretty sure I do.
It was really awkward. Really awkward.
Were you tall as a kid too, or was that later?
I started to become tall in middle school. Okay. I was always around. I was pretty average in elementary school.
Okay, so you were average height. It wasn't that.
But I was definitely not athletic. I was very I still am extremely clumsy. I'm the most unathletic athlete you will ever meet.
All right. What has been your most rewarding achievement?
Oh wow! Oh my gosh!
It can be on or off the mat.
On and off the mat.
You choose.
This is a hard one. Oh my gosh.
Not. Quickly,
dude,
go, because Gary's going to choke you out.
I think,
sure.
I think honestly, probably being an instructor.
Why?
Oh, you thought I was going to say, the medals, the glory.
No, I thought you were going to say school. I thought you were going to say school.
No, fuck school. I'm just kidding. I like being an instructor because I like having that kind of FaceTime with students, and I like having a community, and I like the idea that I have for my own gym when it happens in the future is very specific, but I want to use my talents and my skills to build up a community of individuals so that they can achieve their goals, whatever they may be. They don't have to be jiu-jitsu related. I just know that jiu-jitsu helps a lot of people. It's therapeutic, but it's not therapy. And I think it's very useful for tackling some serious baggage inside and for learning the kind of systems for achieving your goals in the long run. So I think being an instructor just has humbled me a lot. It has made me see that I don't know anything. I actually am always in a state of learning, and I always need to make sure that I'm sharpening the tools that I have in my skill set, and that I can't ever take anything for granted. That a lot of programs don't have love put into them, and you constantly have to put in love and effort and just energy to make something grow.
Yeah, I see. This is why I asked, because there is, again, I don't want to deviate from the questions, but we often ask individuals, what drives them, especially if they're in that leadership role on and off the mat, and always the goals are different. Or in their mind, the justification or the reward, the satisfaction is very different. But that's what makes the good instructor, is the love and passion for what you do. There's so many out there, unfortunately, who, might think they are good. It's just the passion is not there anymore or yet, whatever the position they find themselves. So good for you. Good for you.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have you ever wanted to quit?
All the time.
We know this answer.
I seriously, I asked my dad if I could quit in 8th grade. We were making a bed together, and I asked him if I could quit because I told him at the time, I was like, I'm seriously thinking about killing myself if I don't stop training because I hate it so much. And he said, well, if you live in this house, then you have to train. And I said, okay, guess that's what I have to do.
Describe your feelings when you received your black belt.
I was shocked. I'd always been this annoying person who'd always be like, when am I getting promoted? Why? I won a purple belt absolute at 15 and got a stripe after the following promotion. So I was like, what the hell? Where is my belt?
What do I have to do here?
Yeah, where are my belts? Where are my belts? And we had this also toxic competition between us brown belts at Marcelo's where we were trying to out black belt one another. I get my black belt first, you're going to get your black belt second. I wasn't I need to get my black belt, but I definitely wanted it to happen. When I heard my name be called, I was just stunned. And I was floored and extremely happy because I knew I wasn't happy that I got my black belt. I was happy that doors had opened. I was happy that I was going to be able to compete against black belts and compete against people that were icons to me. I was finally going to be able to test my own skills against the icons that I glorified when I was younger. And that was the most exciting thing of all.
Emotional moment for all who have reached that level. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. And then
the most important question.
The most important question. Do you wash your belt?
I didn't used to, but now I do.
Yeah. Just
I grew up.
Year?
I learned more information. Yeah. No, I started washing my belt when I was 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your knowledge didn't wash away.
No, it did not. Y'all are nasty that are not washing your belts. I won't train with you. That's gross.
Who said we don't? Ask questions.
I'm talking about the great population of y'all who train jiu-jitsu who don't wash your belts. Because some of y'all are stinky. Some of y'all don't use deodorant. So I don't know. I know that belt probably stays at the bottom of your bag, just absorbing whatever scary things that bag has seen.
All the living things down there that are with it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, there you go. Now we have that visual.
First it was poop, and now it's all the stuff living at the bottom of your bag.
You gotta be candid. Give the people what they want. They want the truth.
All right. Well, they got it today.
Mm-hmm.
They got it today.
Listen,
thank you so much.
Thanks for hanging out with us. I mean, this was a lot of fun, but not only that, it was pretty deep. Actually, it was by far. You surprised me with how deep you went with some of those thoughts and stories that you shared with us. So I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate really putting yourself in a vulnerable spot and sharing some of those, vulnerable stories. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on my Instagram. I'm at Dom Da Bomb, your mom. And yeah, well, Johnny Group asked me to change that to something more professional years ago, and I said no. If you want to reach me through my website for any kinds of deals like seminars, privates, you want to connect with me and ask me questions, I'm always down to answer. You can email me. My website is www.dominyka.com. And if you want to check out my art, it's dominyka-art.com.
Sweet.
Wonderful. That's awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes too, so everybody can have a good glance at that. Real quick, I don't know, it just popped into my head a while ago, but being an older gentleman and surrounded by old men all the time who complain about the younger generation, I think there's a lot of hope for the future. If you listen to this episode, you're going to hear it too. So thank you for everything.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
If you're ever in Chicago area, let us know. I would love to have you in my academy. But besides that, thanks for hanging out with us.
Are we done? Is that it?
Yeah, I guess. Pete.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Take care. We had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.